Machiavelli, the banned leadership system that built every Fortune 500 CEO. The villain who exposed how power actually works in America. Picture this, a man who dared to write history's most dangerous leadership manual. A treatise so explosive, it turned his name into a synonym for manipulation and ruthlessness. I'm talking about Niccolo Machiavelli and his game-changing masterpiece, The Prince. But here's the secret nobody tells you. Machiavelli wasn't the villain. He was the surgeon who had the guts to expose the real anatomy of power. As a performance archaeologist studying historical greatness, I discovered something mind-blowing in those Florentine manuscripts. Machiavelli didn't invent manipulation, he revealed it. He didn't create leadership's dark side, he documented it with surgical precision. And that's exactly the mindset that separates mediocre leaders from legendary ones. We live in an era obsessed with surface-level niceness, where everyone wants to be loved. But Machiavelli confronts us with brutal truth. It is better to be feared than loved, not because we should be cruel, but because we must be effective. Leadership isn't a popularity contest, it's three-dimensional chess, where every move counts. What I discovered studying history's greatest strategists is they all shared one trait. They were simultaneously lion and fox. Lion to face the wolves, fox to detect the traps. Not through cruelty, but through pure strategic intelligence. Steve Jobs wasn't loved by everyone at Apple, but he created products that changed the world. Napoleon didn't conquer Europe by being nice, but through flawless military strategy. Machiavellian discipline isn't about being evil. It's about seeing the world as it really is, not as we wish it were. It's about making decisions based on reality, not romantic illusions. How many opportunities have you lost fearing others' judgment? How many times did you avoid doing what was necessary to maintain a nice guy image? High performance emerges when you stop trying to please everyone and start focusing on what actually works. When you understand that leadership is responsibility, not privilege, that results matter more than intentions. That strategy beats emotion. Here is your first real power exercise. Identify a situation where you felt powerless due to fear of judgment. Now ask yourself, what would be the most effective action? Completely ignoring external opinions. Don't answer quickly. Feel the weight of that question. That's the first stone of your mental fortress. The world doesn't need more nice people who make no difference. It needs leaders who have the courage to be effective, even when that means making unpopular decisions. Machiavelli taught us that true power ethics lie in the results you deliver, not the approval you receive. Remember, leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about accepting responsibility for the consequences of your decisions. It's about building something bigger than your need for approval. The brutal reality is that while you're worried about being liked, your competitors are focused on being effective. While you're seeking consensus, they're making decisions. While you're avoiding conflict, they're solving problems. This isn't about becoming heartless, it's about becoming strategic. Think about every great leader you admire. Did they achieve greatness by being universally loved, or by making tough calls that ultimately served the greater good? Lincoln wasn't popular when he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Churchill wasn't beloved when he warned about Hitler. Bezos wasn't praised when he prioritized long-term growth over short-term profits. The Machiavellian lesson isn't about manipulation, it's about effectiveness over popularity, substance over style, results over rhetoric. It's about having the intellectual honesty to acknowledge that leadership sometimes requires unpopular decisions for beneficial outcomes. If the idea of effectiveness over popularity resonates with you, comment pragmatism below. The military code that separates leaders from managers: virtue versus fortune. If you had the courage to question your leadership assumptions, you're ready to unlock Machiavelli's most powerful code, the eternal battle between virtue and fortuna. This isn't just academic theory. It is the mental blueprint that separated conquerors from the conquered throughout history, and it's still determining who wins in today's business world. Let me break down these two concepts that revolutionized my understanding of high performance. Virtue isn't moral virtue as we know it, it's your capacity for action, your ability to make quick, precise decisions under pressure. It's your technical competence combined with emotional intelligence. Fortuna, on the other hand, represents everything outside your control: markets, politics, public opinion, natural disasters, global pandemics. Losers spend their lives trying to control fortune. Winners use virtue to dance with it. It's like surfing: you don't control the waves, but you develop the skill to ride them masterfully. This simple distinction explains why some people thrive in chaos, while others get crushed by it. Analyzing history's greatest leaders, I discovered a fascinating pattern. Churchill didn't control Nazi bombings, but he controlled his response to them. Bezos didn't control economic crises, but he controlled how Amazon reacted to them. Oprah didn't control her humble origins, but she controlled how she'd use that experience to connect with millions. The mental revolution happens when you stop wasting energy trying to change the unchangeable and focus obsessively on what you can influence: your mindset, your skills, your decisions, your reactions. That's the impregnable fortress nobody can tear down. Think about how many times you've let yourself get emotionally drained by situations completely outside your control. Traffic, weather, economy, and people's behavior. Every minute spent frustrated with the uncontrollable is energy stolen from what truly matters: developing your virtue. Here is the exercise that changed my life and can change yours. Take a current situation that is stressing you out. Divide a sheet into 2 columns: can control and cannot control. Be brutally honest. The clarity emerging from this process is transformational. You will realize that 80% of your stress comes from trying to control the 20% that is beyond your reach. True freedom isn't about doing what you want, but about wanting what you can control. It's not about avoiding problems, but developing the capacity to solve them. It's not about eliminating uncertainty, but thriving within it. Machiavelli understood that destiny is an immutable cosmic force. It is what happens when you don't have enough virtue to shape it. That's why he said fortune is like a woman. She responds better to boldness than timidity. Not from sexism, but because life rewards those who act, not those who hesitate. High performance is born from the discipline of focusing exclusively on your circle of influence, gradually expanding it through constant development of your capabilities. Every new skill is conquered territory. Every conscious decision is recovered power. The most successful people in any field have mastered this distinction. They don't waste mental energy on market conditions. They can't influence. They focus on building products so good that markets respond favorably. They don't stress about competitor actions. They concentrate on executing their own strategy flawlessly. This is why startup founders who succeed aren't those who predict market timing perfectly, but those who build such strong execution capabilities that they can adapt to any market condition. It's why athletes who win championships aren't those who control weather or referees, but those who've trained their skills to perform regardless of external circumstances. If you understand that virtue is your only real weapon against chaos, comment virtue below. The Billionaire's Secret: How to Be Lion and Fox. Silicon Valley's Hidden Playbook. We've reached the core of Machiavelli's strategic genius: the ability for instant transformation. He said the prince must know how to be both lion and fox. And this isn't metaphor, it's applied leadership technology. But pay attention, I'm not talking about multiple personalities. I'm talking about high-level adaptive intelligence. Let me share something that completely changed my perspective on effective leadership. Analyzing history's greatest strategists from Alexander the Great to Elon Musk, I discovered they all mastered this art of contextual metamorphosis. They weren't consistently aggressive or passive. They were strategically fluid. The lion is necessary when you need to face direct threats, establish clear boundaries, or lead through force and determination. Jobs was lion when cutting mediocre projects at Apple. Vince Lombardi was lion when demanding excellence from the Green Bay Packers. Margaret Thatcher was lion when restructuring Britain's economy. The fox emerges when you need to navigate complex politics, detect hidden traps, or achieve cooperation through emotional intelligence. Jobs was fox when seducing investors and partners. Lombardi was fox when individually motivating each player. Thatcher was fox when negotiating with other world leaders. Most people fail at leadership because they lock into a single operational mode. They're always aggressive or always conciliatory, always direct or always indirect. But the real world demands strategic flexibility. One moment requires brute force. Another demands surgical subtlety. Here's the secret few understand. Metamorphosis isn't about fakeness, it's about contextual adequacy. The best surgeon doesn't use the same instrument for every operation. The best chef doesn't use the same technique for every dish. Why should a leader use the same approach for every situation? I developed a mental framework that revolutionized my leadership capacity. Before any important interaction, I asked 3 questions. What's the real objective of the situation? What type of person am I dealing with? Which approach has the highest probability of success? The answer determines whether I access the lion or the fox. With subordinates needing clear direction, lion. With peers needing influence, fox. With superiors needing to be impressed, fluid combination of both. With clients needing to trust, first fox to create connection, then lion to demonstrate competence. The mental transformation happens when you realize personality isn't destiny, it's a tool. You're not naturally shy or aggressive. You consciously choose which aspect to access based on situational effectiveness. That's real power. But beware of superficial interpretation. Being lion and fox doesn't mean being fake. It means being complete. It means having conscious access to the full spectrum of human responses, choosing the one that best serves the greater objective. This is exactly what we see in today's most successful leaders. They're tough in negotiations, but compassionate with their teams. They're demanding about standards, but understanding about failures. They're aggressive in pursuing opportunities, but patient in building relationships. The key is conscious choice rather than reactive behavior. Weak leaders react emotionally to situations. Strong leaders respond strategically. They choose their emotional state based on what the situation requires, not what they feel in the moment. Practice this week. Identify a situation where you always use the same approach. Consciously experiment with the opposite approach. If you're always direct, try subtlety. If you're always conciliatory, try firmness. Observe the results without judgment. If you're ready to master the art of adaptive leadership, comment shapeshifter below. How to build a mental empire that outlasts your lifetime. We've reached the point where Machiavelli's philosophy transcends history and becomes the architecture of your future. What truly impresses about the Machiavellian legacy wasn't his temporary political achievements, but the immortality of his strategic ideas. 500 years later, the prince is still studied at Harvard, still influences Wall Street decisions, still shapes global leaders. This made me reflect deeply on what truly constitutes sustainable high performance. It's not the results you achieve, but the thought systems you develop. It's not what you build, but how you think. It's not the power you accumulate, but the wisdom you distill. Machiavelli died 5 centuries ago, but his mind still governs boardrooms worldwide. His insights still determine corporate strategies. His lessons still shape leaders who don't even know they're applying Machiavellian principles. That's intellectual immortality, the kind of legacy that transcends time, geography, and circumstance. Here is the revelation that changed my approach to legacy building. You don't need to conquer physical empires to achieve immortality. You need to conquer yourself so completely that your mindset becomes a replicable model. You need to develop principles so solid they survive time's storms. Analyzing historical figures who achieved this transcendence: Marcus Aurelius, Leonardo da Vinci, Einstein, Gandhi, and discovered fascinating patterns. They all developed unique mental frameworks. They all systematically documented their insights. They all focused more on principles than tactics. They all understood that true power lies in the ability to influence future generations' thinking. Mental dynasty begins when you stop pursuing immediate recognition and start building permanent relevance. When your decisions are guided not by what's popular today, but by what will be correct forever. When you develop disciplines that work regardless of external context. Machiavelli knew something profound about human nature. The same forces that moved Florentine princes would still move leaders 5 centuries later. Ambition, fear, hope, Pride. These variables are historical constants. That's why his insights remain relevant. He focused on what doesn't change instead of what changes. Your mental dynasty must be built on equally solid foundations. What principles have you developed that would work in any era? What decision-making systems have you created that would resist any external pressure? What aspects of your character have you forged that would remain intact under any test? This is what separates temporary success from lasting impact. Temporary success depends on favorable external conditions. Lasting impact depends on internal systems that work regardless of external conditions. Look at the leaders whose influence has lasted decades or centuries. They all left behind more than achievements. They left behind ways of thinking. They created mental models that others could apply long after they were gone. The final exercise of this journey is a commitment to eternity. Imagine you are writing a letter to a future leader, someone who will be born 100 years from now, but will face fundamentally similar challenges to yours. What wisdom would you transmit? What principles would you crystallize? What mental systems would you document? Write that letter, not as a theoretical exercise, but as a blueprint of your mental dynasty. Every insight you document becomes part of your intellectual immortality. Every principle you develop becomes inheritance for future generations. True high performance isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you transmit. Not by the power you exercise, but by the wisdom you distill. Not by the problems you solve, but by the frameworks you create for others to solve similar problems in the future. The question isn't whether you'll leave a legacy. Everyone does. The question is what kind of legacy you'll leave. Will it be measured in dollars that inflate, buildings that crumble, and titles that become obsolete? Or will it be measured in minds influenced, principles established, and systems created that continue generating value long after you're gone? If you're ready to begin building your mental dynasty, comment eternity below.